House of EdTech, Episode 106. Support for this episode of the House of EdTech comes from my awesome supporters. If you'd like to become an awesome supporter of the podcast, go to chrisnessy.com/awesome. And from Kite Learning. Are you an educator trying to stay afloat in a sea of changing technology? Kite Learning knows how you feel. With Kite Learning, you can learn about all things EdTech at your own pace. Go grab a 14-day free trial where you can get unlimited access to all of their content, track your progress, earn badges and certificates, as well as CEUs and college credit. To get your 14-day free trial, go to chrisnessy.com/kite learning, and that's KYTE learning. Welcome to the House of EdTech podcast. I am your host, Chris Nessy. The House of EdTech explores how technology is changing the way teachers teach and the impact that technology is having in education. I discuss technology that is changing our classrooms and schools, and I share tools and tips that you can hear today and use tomorrow. You're going to hear the stories of teachers, leaders, and creators just like you. The purpose? Whether you use it or not, technology is changing the way you teach and how your students learn. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 106 of the House of EdTech, and I am here live on location on the campus of the University of Utah here in beautiful Salt Lake City, and I am not alone. I am joined by two former guests of the podcast. Please welcome back to the program, Derek Larson and Lynn Smargis.
Hey there.
Lynn, how are you?
I'm doing awesome. I was very excited to be at UCET today and excited to hang out with you again, Chris Nessy. And I'm totally stoked that all three of us finally got together to do a podcast.
This is really super exciting. And Derek, my chauffeur, my friend, my compadre for the last few days. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm the Edu Uber for Utah. Take care of business.
Edu Uber.
Even a late night pizza run, right, Chris?
It was a delicious pizza. It was carbonara pizza. It was delicious.
Can't be as good as the pizza in the Northeast.
Well,
it was different. It was Italian pizza.
Ah,
it was pretty good.
Is that what they call pizza in Utah?
No, let
me just say. Now, let me preface this by saying, ladies and gentlemen, that as we record this, we're kind of in a different setup. This is really the House of EdTech mobile. So a little bit, let's pull back the curtain a little bit. Derek and I are recording into Spreaker Studio on my MacBook, and Lynn is being recorded into Boss Jock Studio on the iPad mini. And through the magic of editing, hopefully future Chris has been able to put this all back together. But as I sit here right now, I really don't know what's going to happen. Now, Derek, you're on the board for UCET. So for the listener, what is UCET and what has the last 2 days been all about?
So UCET is an acronym. It stands for the Utah Coalition for Educational Technology. Basically, we are the ISTE affiliate here in Utah, and we run a 2-day conference every spring, typically on a Thursday, Friday. And the last 3 years, we've been here at the University of Utah as our host location. We come together and we bring in some of the best educators in the state to help train other educators within the state. We've also have a number of folks that have come from all over. Ginger Lumen, who was a previous keynote 2 years ago, came back this year because she loved her time so much. We have you from Jersey coming over, so we have a few out-of-staters that just have added to it. So this has been our biggest year yet, with over 1,800 people registered. And I'm not sure on all the check-ins, but that's a pretty big feat. Normally we have about 1,500 registered.
It's fantastic, Lynn, to have that many people come together for a really good conference, because you've been here a number of years.
Yeah, this is my 6th year at UCET. This is the first year I have not presented at UCET. I wasn't able to make the proposal deadline this year. But anyway, the thing I love about UCET is if you're really into tech or you want to learn more about tech, like this is the conference to go to in Utah. Because I've been to lots of other conferences and they're fine and you learn some really great stuff. But like as far as like the tech part of the EdTech goes, this is like the bomb conference for sure.
Now, before we get too much further into the episode, we have all the makings of a great episode of the House of EdTech. We're going to have the EdTech Thought. We've got an EdTech recommendation. And of course, no episode is complete without the House of EdTech VIP. But before we go any further, I do want to remind you that as this episode is coming out, episode 106, the House of EdTech Final Four is in full swing. Voting is underway for the largest single elimination tech tool tournament on the planet. And as I said last time, really it's the only single elimination EdTech tool tournament on the planet
that we know of.
Yes. But go over to chrisnessy.com/HoET Final 4, the number 4, to vote and see if you can get your favorite EdTech tools to the House of EdTech Final Four, which will be coming up in the next episode, 107, on April 8th, 2018. All right, so for this episode's EdTech Thought, we have Lynn, we have Derek here. So I'm going to throw out a question for you guys and give you the opportunity to share your thoughts and maybe debate or argue or, heck, even have a fist fight here in this really awesome studio.
My glasses off.
I've got my glasses in my bag, so I'm all ready.
So it'll be like a little bit of a game. So my question is, and I want to get both of your takes on it. What is the value for somebody getting involved in integrating technology into their classroom here in 2018?
So I think for me, when I first started I started integrating technology about 8 or 9 years ago, because I've been teaching about 10 years. And I think for me anyway, the value of integrating technology is like the student engagement and the student involvement. Like when you're integrating technology, I feel like students are more likely to get into what they're doing and be engaged and really like what they're doing. For me, for the teacher side, I think I use Canvas, and for instance, this week I was out sick. And so all I had to do is put my assignments on Canvas and let the sub know what the kids were doing. And so I didn't have to have papers printed. It was super easy for me. So as a teacher, using Canvas or just using technology in general really reduces my workload as far as things that I have to make sure are set up or things like that. So for me as a teacher, it reduces my workload. Canvas creates all my stuff for me, which means I can spend more time on lesson planning and being creative instead of grading and doing just bland, regular old teacher work.
Derek, let's toss it over to you.
So I'm going to go at more the teacher side, be a little more selfish, if you will. For me, tech integration is important because while we want to have the kids excited and involved, if as a teacher, sometimes that's what it takes. It's something just to spice it up. And UCET is a conference that happens in the spring, and there have been talks of moving it to the fall. But I like it in the spring because it gives you a chance to come in, learn new stuff, some new ideas, and go back and guinea pig with your students and totally mess things up, muck it up for a couple of weeks before school gets out and try what you want to do. So the next school year, you can really kind of go in running strong. And so for me, technology integration helps me to keep active and excited and involved in what I'm doing and kind of keep me on my toes so that it doesn't get stale.
It's not about winning or beating anybody, but I like the point you made, Derek, about using stuff here at the end of the year. And I've talked about it before, where we've built a positive rapport with our students at this point in the school year. We're comfortable with the parents. We are ready to really try new things because you can be honest with your kids and say, this might not work. This is something I want to try, and you guys can help me improve my teaching. And the worst time to start something new is in September because there's so much new, or in August here in Utah, everything is new. New rules, new regulations, new administrators. And if you experience failure or limited success at the start of the school year, you're more likely to abandon. Yeah,
you're more likely to burn out if you do it at the beginning of the year.
We need way less burnout.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm real big on the fact that obviously I wouldn't use new stuff at the end of the year on super important mission critical, but you throw it in more fun areas to kind of see where it's going so that it's not so mission critical. But I tell my kids from day one, you are my guinea pigs. We will try stuff every single day that will fail. I've always had a growth mindset, even before I knew the phrase, that basically failing is not a bad word for me. It's a good F word. And I like the frequent attempts in learning and that kind of an analogy piece. I like that because it makes a lot more sense for me, and it helps my kids to see, it's okay to totally goof and have stuff mess up because that's what we're here to learn, and that's how you learn is by experience, and nothing is going to really break or to be destroyed through that. And so just go for it. And that helps me to keep excited about education.
And to piggyback off of what Derek just said, I totally agree with that. And one of the things I do is when we're using some technology and I'm like, oh, how does that work? Or I can't get that to work. And the kids are like, oh, have you tried this? Or have you tried that? And so just having the kids help you get through the technology is also really fun because the kids will if the kids figure it out for you, that's like such a big stake for them in like their educational process. It's like, oh, I figured it out. And the teacher didn't figure this one little thing out. Or the other thing is like the kids will figure out a feature or a use that I didn't know was part of an application or a program, which is really cool because they've discovered it and then they can show me and then I can take that, integrate it into the next lesson. And so I think that's definitely a part of it as well.
And I think on that note, since we're getting to that point where we're probably going to want to start recommending and talking about things, why don't we go over to and recommend some House of EdTech recommendations. All right, and really this episode's EdTech recommendation is probably going to be a multitude of recommendations. So why don't we continue our conversation with Derek and Lynn? And what we started the EdTech thought with, why don't we come up with some things that, as Derek, you were saying, now you're not in the classroom right now. You're in a different type of position where you're still working with teachers. If you were in the classroom right now, whether it's 4th or 5th grade, and I know you love the 4th graders, what would you use now here at the end of this year in 2018 that you'd be excited to use with students?
So I attended a great Ignite session today where the presenter basically talked about Raspberry Pi. And I'm a Raspberry Pi certified educator, and so I love that program, that platform, with the whole computer system. But the way he handled it, I would totally go in with it. And he basically said he bought a bunch, gave them to his students and said, here's some videos, good luck. Now, 4th graders, that might be a little bit tough, but literally had them assemble, install, run, and then they came back and taught him what was happening. Now, I think that's a huge thing, as Lynn was saying previously, gives the kids that idea that I'm doing something and I'm helping the teacher. And so that's something that I would totally pull out at this time of year. Robotics, some basic computers, stuff like that, Arduinos, Raspberry Pi, and just kind of let the kids play and say, okay, let's look and see what it is. You're not going to break it per se. Let's just kind of go with it and kind of have some fun. So that's a recommendation I would go with, specifically Raspberry Pi or the Arduino or Microbit if you can get your hands on one. They're a hot commodity right now.
So I actually have a question for Derek.
Oh, go ahead.
So Derek, real quick. So I'm not a Raspberry Pi certified educator. I was actually in the process of doing that. So would you pick Raspberry Pi has all these different projects. So would you pick one of those projects for the kids, or would you say, hey, there's these 3 projects we can do, you can pick one of those?
So as a 4th and 5th grade upper elementary teacher, you want kids to have choice, but you also can't give them the Cheesecake Factory mega menu. You're going to give them the kiddie meal menu that has 3 options. And so I would go through and say, here are 3 things. And I would probably, even with them, I may work through one initially with them and then say, now here's 3 more to choose from, just to kind of get them going. Cool. Because you give them too many and they freeze up, just like we do at Cheesecake Factory, going, I don't know what to order.
But with 3, they still have a choice.
Yes, they still have plenty of choice. And you can really limit it down that they can all 3 do the same basic thing, but yet in different approaches. So they feel like they have the choice, and they feel like they have a big choice.
So for me, actually, there's 2 of the things I'm going to be using from UCET that I went to classes for this time. One of them is Clips from Apple. So Apple has a app that's called Clips, I believe, and it's a really great. I just won another grant, and if you haven't listened to the grant program on Chris Nessie's House of EdTech, I just won, I think, my 7th or my 8th grant. I don't know. Anyway, and I won 10 Apple iPads. And so what I'm going to do with that, one of the things we have is advisory class, and it's 50 minutes long, but we don't have 50 minutes of material. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to use that Clips program and have kids make a paper outline of a book review, because we have a classroom set of books just for fun reading in the back, and then use that paper review to make an actual Clips and videotape each other making a book review on Clips, and then upload that to their Google Drive, and then we can share it out on our class website. So I think that's going to be a really fun project. The other thing that we're going to do, and how I got my classroom grant, is that my classroom grant was based on coding Swift with students. And so I coded Swift with fourth graders last year. And then this year I plan on coding with my seventh and eighth graders during my extension period, which is also / our advisory time. And so I'll be doing that on Wednesdays and Thursdays with the kids. And so doing some Swift coding with them to learn the basics of Swift, like probably level 1 and 2. And then because Swift is a really great place to start for coding if you're starting with coding, besides Block. Like Block is a great place, but I love using Swift. It's really engaging and the kids are really fun. And the other class I really loved, Chris, was yours, of course, on podcasting. That was really engaging and really fun. And I definitely want to consider using podcasting in my class as well.
Thanks for sucking up. No.
You're welcome anytime.
Great share, Lynn. Derek, you said you were just about to say something else, so why don't you go ahead and share that?
Yeah, so something that we had a playground area this year with all kinds of like smaller areas, smaller ideas of different tools, and you often see robotics like the Spheros and the Autobots and whatnot. But we saw a really cool item where I can't remember the exact company. We'll look into it, but basically the idea was that they used robotics in language arts, and they made like a parade float for a book, and so they made a whole parade. Each student made a different float based on a different part of the book. And so this little robot tool, you literally would draw out the route of the parade, and they'd follow along, but they'd see where they were and keep the distance. But I'd never considered doing something like that to bring language arts right in.
Yeah.
And that's a fun way to do it.
And based on the way you described it, when we first met the company, my comment was, it's kind of like the Ozobot, but it's not powered by that. But the idea of drawing it out and it follows the line. And I believe she had also talked about, when you're doing the parade, the sensors would pick up the distance between these parade floats, which seemed really cool. And the one that she was building, she was feverishly hot gluing this thing together. It looked really cool. And what was the book that she pulled an excerpt from?
It was To Kill a Mockingbird.
To Kill a Mockingbird. And the float, there was it moved.
Yeah, she'd done a lot of work with it. So as it was going, it was all out of cardboard, so you think of pop-up book kind of style doing, but it was really fun to kind of watch how it went. But yeah, it had sensors that read on the bottom where it was going, sensors in the front so that if it got too close, it would literally stop and wait and then get going again. Super incredible, but just the language arts piece.
And the thing that she talked about, again, with the tech, because that's what we're interested in as well, was it would stop and then the float would perform, and that's when if there was something that was moving, it would move or spin around and then would continue on. So it was so cool.
That sounds really neat.
And I think that's often we think, robotics is a math thing or it's a science thing. And we don't think to put it with language arts or with history. And right then and there, my mind just went huge and went, okay, so many more ways to use even the Sphero, the Autobots, whatever you're doing, and kind of go with it. The fact that you could say, okay, we're gonna model the Gettysburg battle. We're going to have the things here, and you have the Autobots with the Spheres.
Make Washington cross that Delaware.
Just cross it all over. It's so fun. What a great way to bring that in. And the kids just my fourth and fifth graders, if they saw the Spheros out, they freaked out. They loved it. It was one of their favorite things.
The years are really popular. One of the things I did with my kids with Autobots last year was I had them, when they did their Autobot programming, they had to make a picture that you could tell. So I had kids making cats, flowers, all sorts of different things. So I kind of incorporated a little bit of art into it that way, where they had to make something that was an actual picture, and their Autobot had to start at a point and go around their entire picture, and they had to have a certain amount of programming cues in there as well. So that was a lot of fun. The kids enjoyed that.
And that sounds like all stuff that you don't just have to do during Hour of Code, but integrate the stuff
into
all
your
year
regular
round.
curriculum, for
maybe
sure.
You start with Hour of Code, and then you do this kind of stuff at the end, the second half of the year. You get going. Just awesome ideas to play.
I recently here in March utilized, the code.org to have my kids learn about how to create video games, because we're talking about technology and society, and they're into games. So we did the Star Wars module, and they were programming their BB-8s and their R2-D2s and making games and sharing them, but it wasn't Hour of Code.
But the cool thing is you can take any of the Hour of Code and you can use them anytime during the year. It doesn't just have to be that week. And when I first started Hour of Code the first year it was only, I think, 4 different coding programs. But now there's dozens and dozens. So no matter what grade level your kids are at, you can do the Hour of Code, and it doesn't have to be that week. It can be you can incorporate an Hour of Code every week for the last 4 weeks of class is a fun activity to do.
What? Have fun in class?
No,
Have fun? What? Whoever does that?
So anything else you guys would recommend based on things you saw? Because, again, I was only here and I was presenting, so people have heard my recommendations on podcasting forever.
I think I'll leave it at that. We could be here all day looking at some of the amazing things. Like I said, we had many, many great sessions, but those were two things that really kind of jumped out and grabbed me this year at UCET.
Anything else from you, Lynn, that you saw that was interesting?
I went to a lot of the Apple stuff this year, just because I'm an Apple fan, and I liked a lot of. Huh?
Fangirl.
Yes, I am an Apple fangirl for sure. I just liked a lot of the really creative uses that Apple has now brought into, like the iPad, and you could use in education that were not there before. So I'm really enjoying a lot of the upgrades with the iOS 11 for sure, for stuff that you can use in the classroom.
Definitely check out all the links to everything that we've assembled here throughout this little piece of it. Make sure you head over to chrisnessy.com/106 and check out everything that we just shared with you. All right, now, ladies and gentlemen, for our featured segment, again, so gracious and so excited to have both Derek Larson and Lynn Smargis right here in what is a really cool room here in, what is this building called again, Derek?
Warnock Engineering Building.
And we're in the Coleman study room.
The Coleman study room. We're going to be talking about conferences, tech conferences, what goes into it. I know Derek has put a lot of work into it. I've had similar experiences on a, albeit smaller scale, with EdCamp New Jersey. But Derek, why don't you get us going here?
So one of the things we were talking about is looking at planning conferences, but then also attending, because not everyone is going to plan a conference, but many of us will attend a conference. And so how can we get the most out of attending a conference? Because if you just show up day one and have no idea what's going on, you've done yourself a massive disservice, because behind the scenes, the bigger the conference, the more planning that goes into it. And I've been lucky enough, or cursed, however you want to look at it, to have been on the UCET board for the past 5 years. I've also planned a number of ed camps. And I've also planned a whole nother conference called SUCON, which was a conference that happened in southern Utah for a number of years that is no longer happening. So I've got a little bit of experience with some of these big conferences, and it takes a lot of work. And sometimes when you get to a conference, you don't realize how much back end has gone on. And so I think it's just important to realize that as we get in and kind of going, when little things go wrong, they may seem massive to you, but stop for a second, I would just say, and think about it. And as you're giving the advice, as you're giving the feedback, try to do it as kindly as you can, because honestly, we just finished this today. Our next board meeting is in April, and we'll be starting for 2019's conference already, just literally as soon as we finish gathering, looking for vendors, looking for everything else back again. And so it takes a lot out of you. Sometimes some of these big conferences, and we're not nearly the size of an ISTE or a Q or an FETC, but we're still, we're pretty good. Like I said, 1,800 folks registered this year, and we probably were pretty close to having those numbers attend.
Now, actually, let me ask this, and let's maybe do a little backwards design here. So you have your next board meeting that's going to come up in, say, a month or so. What role does the feedback you've gotten already and will get, or how do you solicit feedback, and how does that factor into what you're going to do in subsequent years for a conference of this scale?
Yeah, so one of the things we do is we use an app called Cvent. It's a paid app that handles all the back end, so all of our piece for building out the schedule and planning the conference. We use that. I think ISTE uses the same app, but a different tier of what we use. But in that, every session has a place for feedback, and so we literally read word for word every bit of feedback that comes in. We send out a Google form to every volunteer, because we realize that the volunteers who are helping, they're seeing things good, bad, and ugly. And if you want to make something better, you can't just look for good. You have to look for the bad and the ugly, because if you're not, you're missing huge opportunities for growth. So we do send out Google Forms. We do send out different areas. We also have feedback built in. And so this next board meeting in April, we'll literally be going through and we'll basically, as a board, even saying, what did you see, good, bad, and ugly? What did you see? And we'll compile all that, and all of that comes back. Now, sometimes people think I'm going to get and just rant. doesn't always doesn't do a lot of good. Now, if a lot of people are ranting on the exact same topic, will make a change. So, for example, here at the University of Utah, and most universities in Utah at least, they all have a food group that handles all the food on campus. The food is not great. So what we did this year is we actually hired in catering. So we had a fantastic burger place that came in, and they did double cheeseburgers.
Name drop.
French fries. Iceberg is the name of the company. Amazing. And they're known for their shakes, and they brought little mini shakes.
Their shakes are amazing. Mocha. We had mocha yesterday.
Mocha, we had vanilla.
Chocolate,
they
strawberry.
They were in coolers with the dry ice. It was like, ooh, I want to touch it, but it'll burn. But it was
vanilla.
It was amazing. So
burgers were good.
Now I'm hungry.
We did have some issues with that because with not using the university food, we couldn't be in one of the buildings. So we had to totally park and make it work.
And so that's why it was outside.
And like Utah Springs, I don't know how other states are, but we were perfectly, beautifully clear all last week. This week we had rain on Thursday and on Friday. But the rain didn't,
during lunch.
Perfect timing.
Didn't really start yesterday until right at the tail end of lunch. But today it rained apparently through most of lunch. So, and then today we had Jimmy John's come in and do sandwich lunch boxes.
Which was perfect because I got an which was gluten-free.
Yeah. And we had
it was a lettuce wrap.
So if somebody needed to have gluten-free, they could have gone to the front with the Iceberg burgers, and they would have done what they needed to. They could have given them a, wrapped in lettuce or whatever.
Oh, nice.
Instead. So they were there taking care of business. So that's a big thing where as feedback came in, we had so many griping. We said, this is a concern. Because as board members, we also have the same concern that that's not going to be sufficient. This is not what we want. And so we do look at every bit. And I think if you're going to be a successful conference, you have to look at it all. But then you've got to be able to look at it and say, is this somebody just ranting or is this actually a need? And that's not an easy process.
Hey, Derek, can I put in a request? I need Chick-fil-A next year.
Okay, I will write that down right now. Chick-fil-A request.
But now, and I look at it this way, we've all been to weddings or other big events, and while we'll enjoy the event, a lot of times people will talk about the food at any big event that you go to.
Oh, yes.
So you get the food right, that I would say that takes care of a big percentage of how much happiness you'll get in feedback. You get the food wrong, you don't want to deal with me if I'm hungry and unhappy. I'm not going to be at my best and want to learn.
And one of the things we saw with this year, and we knew we were going to have this, is it took a little bit longer to get through the food line yesterday with the burgers and the fries and the shakes. But even still, it wasn't incredibly awful, I don't think.
No, it didn't seem like it.
A little bit better organized. Again, we've never done that. And so now that was kind of we're going to try it. We're going to see a guinea pig moment. And how do we tweak this for next year? Because it was most of what we got back was tons better, very filling, loved it. I think we'll do something very, very similar, if not the exact same food. I'll put on the request for Chick-fil-A. I can't make any promises there.
That's okay.
No, I'm not going to complain if I get to come back.
Right?
Yeah, no, the food definitely was much better this year, so that was very well appreciated for sure.
So that is one area where feedback does come in, and don't be afraid to send feedback to the conference afterwards. But again, I always like to say, try to find something that is constructive. And if it really was awful and ruined your whole event, go find someone and explain why. But again, keep yourself calm because they spent, I guarantee, months and months.
And I think one of the important things to remember about giving feedback for a conference or for anything for that matter is you can't just say, I didn't like it. You have to say specifically why, but don't do it in a whiny voice. Like say, I didn't like the food because I couldn't eat it because I'm gluten-free and there was not a gluten-free option available. So that it's like constructive, positive feedback that you as the conference person that's putting it on can actually do something about. Because if I just said, I didn't like the food, it's like, well, you can't do anything to change that. So I think that's really important to give really good, specific feedback that's not just complaining, but like a specific reason why you didn't like something.
And isn't that a skill that all teachers should have to give constructive feedback? Don't we do that every day? Should.
So another way, if you really feel strongly about helping out an organization, consider running for their board of director or a position, an elected position. Every year we have it set up where we have a number of positions on our board that are appointed, but the majority are elected positions, meaning every year we vote for a president-elect. And what that means is then that means the next year they'll be the president-elect. The second year they will be the president. The third year they will be the past president, helping to mentor the new president coming up. Or we have positions where you get voted on every year. 4 people are up for a 2-year term. And so that's one way you can get involved. I mean, if you feel very strongly that there's some problems in this area, run for the board, consider that for the next year, and then you can actually legitimately get in there and hopefully make a difference that you think will be helpful.
That is clutch. And, as somebody who organizes an ed camp, one of the things we ask on our feedback form is, are you interested or willing to get involved in planning and organizing? And not just to itch and complain about stuff, to become active and use your voice and try and impact the learning in the event and, make the best possible experience for teachers.
Yeah, it's really important. I think if you feel strong about something, try to get in there and kind of get going with it. Because if not, if you're going to be negative the whole time, why are you here? The whole point of going to a conference is, 1, to learn, but 2, really, you should be having fun. I mean, yes, it's stressful to be away from your class and having subplans, but if you're not enjoying being there, why are you there? I come away from conferences very energized. I'm tired as well, but I'm very energized and renewed in my teaching ideas that how do I get going? And it's fun to be around people who I don't see every year or I don't see all the time, only that one time a year, and it gives me that chance to really get in. And so make sure that you're having fun, because if you're not having fun, find a different conference or do something different.
And a different career in some regards. But Lynn, you were talking about the conference high.
Yeah,
and you've been a little under the weather, but you're peppy. You're feeling good.
I'm actually kind of mostly under the weather today, but no, the thing I love, I just love being around people. I love interacting with people, and I love getting new ideas from my classroom, and just like new ideas and like how far can I push my technology in my classroom with my kids, and what, like for my next lesson, I was thinking like, what can I take from this conference to put in my next lesson for my CCA class? And so, I think it's so exciting just being around all the energy and all of the hype and all of the just fun new things you can play with on the floor and the digital playground and everything. And just in every conference I go to, including UCET, but UCET's really close to my home. And so it's really easy for me to get to, and it's tech. So that's 2 of my best things about UCET. But it's really fun just being around all this energy, and it really just inspires you to do new things in your classroom and just to like meet new people. And I always meet somebody new. Like for instance, this afternoon, I met the 2 people that you had a connection with that now I have a connection with. And so just expanding your PLN is also a great side effect of going to these conferences.
And they were podcasters too.
And they were all podcasters. So 4 of us podcasters sitting in a room together was a lot of fun.
I was going to mention, as we're talking about planning a conference, you got to have enough people on your planning group. And on the UCET board of directors, we have roughly 20 people that sit on this.
Let me just quickly ask, people are important. I'm not going to stop you there. But I will ask, having that many people, you just said 20, 21? How does that work for you guys, having such a large amount of people? Does it ever turn into too many chefs in the kitchen? Too many people who want to have their opinion heard?
So it's interesting because sometimes you do see that. But what we've done lately is we've just really stuck to what is your responsibility. You focus on your area, and when that comes up, people can give their suggestions, but the buck stops with you, so you make the call. So
would that be more like committees and chairpersons?
Kind of, but not. It's just more of assignments and just sticking to those assignments. So like I'm over publicity and PR, so anything that happens along that area, people can help with, but it goes through me. And my friend Cody Plumhoff, he's the web guy. So anything that happens on the website or goes through the website,
so he's the one I can complain to. So now you mentioned that you handle things related to publicity and marketing. You have the webmaster and that part of it. What are some of the other roles that are filled up here?
So we have the executive board consists of our past president, our current president, and our president-elect. We also have a secretary. We have a ISTE liaison.
He got all fancy on that one. Liaison.
They are some pretty important people. Another person that's really huge on that, and any conference should have a person like this, is who is in charge of your vendors. Your vendor person, your vendor rep needs to be somebody that most of these positions are elected in, but there are a few that are specifically appointed for that very reason. You don't want to be having your vendor person change every 2 years. It's one of those where they accept it. They know they're on for 4 or 5 years. It really is a long-term thing.
I think it's important to develop a relationship with your vendors.
And that's exactly why. And so then what happens is when they say, I'm almost done, you have somebody come and work with them side by side for their last year so that way the relationship doesn't just vanish. And so same kind of thing when I decide, or when the board decides my time as the PR publicity person is done, we'll have somebody come in and same kind of idea. So that way we can kind of get out and not lose those contacts. And so it's kind of important to do that. And so we have a number of folks that really go in there. We have a person who's over food, and that's one of their main roles. One person is over volunteers and making sure, because we used over 100 volunteers for this conference this year. And that's a huge undertaking to organize that many people. And Clint Stevens, who's actually a colleague of mine at work in my day job, is incredible. And he handled it very, very smooth. This year, we always have good vendor people, but this year, Clint just really handled it smooth because his workflow of getting it in.
And I just got to say, as an outsider and somebody who is not a resident, from far off New Jersey, everybody who I had the opportunity to meet, you're all genuine, you're authentic, you care deeply about not only education, but putting on a great event. And that really shines through from everything that I saw and got to participate in. So compliments from New Jersey.
Yeah.
So as we shift gears a little bit here, we focused a lot of the last few minutes on creating the conference, organizing the conference, as it were. But Lynn, you want to talk a little bit about attending the conference and the value we get from going to events like a UCET or an EdCamp or ISTE, fill in the blank. So go ahead. Let's hit that.
From an attendee's perspective, I usually attend between 6 and 8 conferences a year, and that includes the summertime. And so one of the things you definitely want to do as an attendee, what I always do is I first create an account with whatever app or online scheduler the conference has, because you want to do that for 2 reasons. One is because you want to find out who's going to be at the event. Because, and then the other is you want to find out what kind of sessions that they're going to have, like what types of sessions. And when you pick sessions, you always have many, many, many choices. So what I do is I'm like, okay, I want to go to this. I'm going to go to learn about coding, or I'm going to go to learn about how to integrate a specific like video editing or whatever. And so I pick a couple of things that I want to really see, because there's so many choices, you have to really narrow it down. And so sometimes also at events you'll get there's a couple different sessions going on at the same time, so you have to decide which one, or you can do a half and half. But you definitely want to go on and figure out who's attending and what sessions you want to do, and plan ahead of time. And don't think because you're planning ahead of time you can't change the sessions, because I've changed sessions, like someone's recommended a session to me that they really liked, and I've changed the session last minute, and I decided not to go to one and to go to something different. So even though you have a schedule plan, that does not mean that's you have to absolutely stick to that, and you cannot change your mind during the actual conference. So you can plan it ahead of time. You can change your mind during the actual conference. The other thing is especially if you're going to a large one like a national event, go on and see who is there, because you want to plan ahead on who you'd like to network with, because that's going to give you an advantage, because you only have a very limited amount of time at the conference to network with people. So reach out to people ahead of time and say, hey, would you like to go out to lunch? Would you like to go out to coffee? I would like to speak to you about, and name a specific thing. And so if you're very upfront with people, 9 out of 10 times they'll make time to get together with you and talk to you about whatever you want to talk about. People are usually very generous and like to help out other educators in the field. So definitely plan on some people you want to talk to ahead of time. That's super helpful to plan out your time. You can always rearrange it later, but to have a basic understanding of who you're going to meet up with, what different sessions you want to attend, so that you have an idea of how you're going to use your time so that you can be more effective while you're at the conference.
Excellent point. Derek, now we talked about the organizing, but you've also attended a number of events both here in the United States and even abroad. What are some of your thoughts on being the attendee?
So Lynn nailed it right on the head initially. Get in and look at the schedule beforehand. If the first time you're seeing sessions is when you walk into the conference, you failed. I'm sorry, not in a good way. You've wasted a lot of time because even smaller conferences, like I said, UCET's not a massive conference, but it's pretty good size. If I had walked in today and never looked at the conference schedule, I would be lost because there were quite a few things. And like Lynn was saying, don't be afraid to change what you're planning. Get in there. I often will mark 3 to 5 sessions each hour or each slot because you know what? You never know. You're going to get in there, and I keep it very loose and very open to say, here's some things that I'm interested in. But again, coming in with a purpose helps you in that area. But it also helps you because sometimes some conferences they will literally shut doors when they've reached a limit, and you're locked out. And it doesn't matter that you really want to see that session, you're not getting in if the door's shut. And so if you don't have anything extra, you've now got to go back into the schedule. And the larger the conference, the more time I'd say to give yourself. Most conferences, we made our app available 2 to 3 weeks prior to the conference. And that may not seem like a lot of time, but it's actually plenty of time. You get in, spend 5 or 10 minutes, update your contact information, your profile. Most of them have a profile thing. Put a picture of you or your Twitter profile picture if you don't use an actual picture. Do it so people know what it is. How can they contact you? Put in your social media again, so they can reach out because you might decide, hey, I really wanted to see that session from this person, but I couldn't get in there. If they've got it marked, you can contact them and say, hey, I tried to come into your session, it was full. Do you have any notes you could share, or could we get together sometime during this time we're here? And as Lynn was saying, I've never had an educator say, back off, I don't have time. Sometimes it literally is, I've got 5 minutes, and I'm not trying to be rude, but that's all the time is. Because some people literally come in and they have 4 hours at the conference and that's it. So they don't necessarily want to spend it all. But I would also recommend plan some open slots where you literally say, I don't have a session I'm going to right now. I'm going to be available to talk to whomever I run into in the hall during. And if you're in a conversation and it's really moving along, don't feel like you've got to rush to another session. Let that go, and you might find that you could make a new connection with someone that will help you in your learning, help their learning, and really build that PLN.
And actually, we did that today because when Chris and I were having lunch, I was actually planning on going to the Apple session, and Quinn and I think it was Mike Matthews stopped by, and they were saying, hey, come on over and do the podcast with us. And so I went to the Apple session a little bit late, but that was actually fine because I got a great experience with 2 new people that I just made a new contact with, and that was really exciting for me. So don't be afraid to walk in a little late to a session if you're having a great networking experience with someone. It's perfectly fine to walk in a few minutes late because usually people are just getting started and they're not into the meat of their presentation yet. So,
and actually, based on what you both just said, when I was doing my session this afternoon, I had 4 people come in, and I went out and I pulled in extra chairs. I pulled in extra tables. So I made sure that, people were comfortable. And I do want to give a shout out here as we're recording this. I'm doing a little live streaming on the House of EdTech Instagram account. So I want to say hello to JP Presevento, who's checking in and watching us live. So thank you, JP, for checking in. Derek Larson, you can wave to JP.
Yes, sir.
Hey, JP.
Thanks for listening, buddy. So I disrupted the conversation, but it's my show, but let's continue.
So one other thing I would also recommend is often conferences will have, they feel like filler sessions, but they're like the registration time. They're like the conference credit time.
The vendor area.
Go in and don't forget to include those things. Lunch is often in there. Mark those things so that as you're looking through, you don't get to that at the end of the day and go, I haven't eaten since ever. I'm going to die.
Well, the other thing people don't realize when you're coming to a conference, too, is when you're constantly learning, you're really draining your energy. And so you need those break times. And so the other thing I like to do is, sometimes I'll plan a session, but I'm too, not burnt out or overwhelmed, but I just need a break from learning. And so I'll go to the vendors area and just say hi to the vendors and grab some chocolate and grab some free stuff. And because it's nice to do that. It's fun just to take a break. And so plan those times and know when the vendors are out. And usually they're out. And what exhibit, where they're at in relation to your sessions that you're going to see. That way you can just maybe stop by for a few minutes in between sessions and check out a couple vendors and take a little bit of a break, grab a snack of candy, and head to your next session.
Fill up your water bottle. Make sure you're hydrated.
Yes. Drink something.
Especially in Utah.
And not even just soda. I mean, oftentimes we think, I'm going to have a Coke or a Mountain Dew or whatever. You've got to have water as well, because you're going to just go back and just feel like you're going to die without it. I mean, quite literally, you're not going to have the energy to go around.
Yeah. So water, comfortable shoes, Derek. I mean, today I had come prepared to, wear my slacks and my dress shoes. But after seeing that people were not as dressed up as I thought they were going to be, today I wore my sneakers, wore my jeans. I was very comfortable, wasn't sweating. I was happy.
Yeah, you walk miles at some conference.
Brain break.
Fresh air break.
I know that brain break is a kind of a strange concept.
It's a dirty term. Brains don't take breaks.
But take a moment when you're not actively learning. Go sit and do some passive learning for a minute.
Colleagues are going to.
That's how I got somebody to come into my last session. A gal who came to the podcast session yesterday came up to me before I was going to start the social media one and said, "Oh, Chris, I'd love to come, but my team, we're going to another session." I said, "How many people?" She was like, "Oh, 5 of us." I said, "You're all going to the same session?" She's like, "Yeah." I was like, "So they'll all take notes. Come to mine."
Yeah.
And she came.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can say sorry, but again, it's your professional development. Whether you go to EdCamp and it's free, or you come to UCET and it costs somebody some money for you to get here, still, you need to get value out of the sessions. I told people at the start of my sessions, I brought in the rule of 2 feet from EdCamp. I said, if at any point during this session you're not getting what you want, get up, walk out. I'm not going to be offended. Right. Go get what you want out of the day. Make sure you can take something back to your school and your district and your students. If I'm not going to give that to you, go get it. All right, and now it's time for this episode's House of EdTech VIP, and we're going to keep with our Utah UCET 2018 theme, and this episode's VIP is Miss Danny Sloan. Danny Sloan is a technology specialist with an expertise in using social media in the classroom. She has her bachelor's in elementary education and a master's in instructional design and educational psychology from the University of Utah, where she is currently an adjunct instructor, teaching technology integration to educators. Danny was a member of the organizing committee for Utah's first EdCamp, and she is enthusiastic about sharing new online tools like using iPads and Chromebooks in the classroom and learning to unplug at home. Danny is also enthusiastic about promoting innovation in classrooms. She's a fan of makerspaces, social media, and teaching teachers being in control of their own PR and their professional development. She'd also like to learn how to unplug at home and manage her email hoarding, which I found out about. And she also likes to spend time with her family and friends, read, listen to podcasts, which is great because I'm a podcaster. We're both fans of Note to Self, hosted by Manu Samarodi, as we've talked about many times. And she also likes to, like many of us, watch shamelessly bad television. If you're not connected with Danny Sloan, you need to do that. She is on Twitter at Danny K. Sloan, and that's DANIKSLOAN. And I will link to that in the show notes and to her website and anything else that she lets me decide to post about her. She did a fantastic job. I got to meet with her really yesterday during the board dinner here at UCET, which was nicely catered, very delicious. And she is just a fantastic personality and somebody who really cares about what she is doing. And it was my pleasure to get the opportunity to meet her. Derek, any kind words about somebody you work closely with?
So you can't say enough nice things about Danny. I've worked with her for many years, not only on the UCET front, but she works the day job with Utah Education Telehealth Network. Basically, she does training all over the state, and I've taught a number of her courses for our educational technology endorsement program for other educators, and she's just incredible to work with. Very professional, but yet she knows how to have fun, and she knows how to get down and have a good time. And Danny, love you to death. Thank you for being such a great president this year.
Yeah, I think Danny, I've had experience with her just a lot on our UCET chat. And no matter what you're doing, Danny is just very enthusiastic, and she always has a great positive attitude and is very into like endorsing EdTech and promoting EdTech in the classroom. And I think Danny's just an amazing overall person.
So there you have it, folks. Congratulations, Danny. You are this episode's House of EdTech VIP. All right, folks, let's put a bow on this one. Thank you, Derek and Lynn, for being here on the episode. Thank you to you who's listening for checking out this episode of the House of EdTech. And really, thank you so much as I sit here in Utah. Thank you so much once again to Kite Learning for not only supporting this episode, but for supporting me to get here to this conference. Thank you so much to the guys over at Kite. Again, check out their 14-day free trial at chrisnessy.com/kite learning. And again, Kite is spelled Kyte. Keep the conversation going. I would love to connect with you. Derek and Lynn would also love to connect with you and hear your thoughts on the information and resources that we discussed in this episode. You can do that by going to chrisnessy.com again /106. If you enjoy the House of EdTech, hey, tell somebody else about the podcast. Sharing it on social media, use @House of EdTech on Twitter, use the hashtag. You could also, if you want to, become an awesome supporter of the show. Many thanks to Eric Kurtz, Dan Gallagher, Peggy George, Jen Giffen, Mark Grindell, Jeff Herb, and JP Presevento, Scott Titmus, and Brent Warner, who, Brent, I guess you heard me in the last episode. You put out another episode of the EdTech.tv podcast, and I enjoyed it. So thank you so much for listening to what I said. If you're interested to become an awesome supporter, go to chrisnessy.com/awesome. Derek, any last thoughts? And please let people know where they can get in touch with you, buddy.
So honestly, the last thoughts I have, I'm going to say thank you to Kite Learning as well. I've worked with those guys for a number of different projects, and they did put a lot of work in to make sure we get Chris out here. And that's something that I felt very strongly about, having Chris come to Utah, because his message is so important. You guys know it because you're listening to this podcast, but share the podcast out with others. Let them hear this and let them have their socks blown off, because really every episode is better and better. He really is great. I'm not just saying that because he's across the table from me. I would say that even if he wasn't
touching
close.
Him right now.
Shaking your hands, folks. But it's been awesome. I've loved having the opportunity to kind of have Chris here physically. So thank you, Kite Learning. Check them out. They are a fantastic tool for educators to go. And they've got a lot of great things in the works that will help you to do even more awesome things. If you want to find me, check me out at edtechbabble.net. That is my, we'll say, not nearly posted enough site. I've got to get back in there. I've kind of neglected a little bit. And you can find me online at Lars3EB, Lars, the number 3EB. Look on any network, you'll probably find it. Probably going to be me.
And I'd also like to second that about Kite Learning. Kite Learning has some really great PD at your own rate, which I really love online. And so, yeah, definitely check Kite out. And I love the fact that we finally got together after talking about this for a year. All three of us are finally in the same room. I am actually touching everybody right now. So super excited that Chris could come out. So thanks, Kite, for bringing out Chris. So we really appreciate it. So we can see him IRL here at the University of Utah at UCET, which was a great event to have him at, and lots of really great information from Chris, which a lot of people were really excited about his session. So, and I'm not just saying that because I'm sitting across from him. I actually did go to his session, and I can vouch that it was an awesome session. And so if you'd like to reach me, you can reach me at Twitter at Lynn Smargis, LYNNSMARGIS. And you can also check me out on my website, LynnElizabethSmargis.com. So all one word. And you can contact me through my website through email as well.
Forgot one area.
You forgot one area, so either you can do it or I can do it. Go ahead, you do it.
So I'm also going to tell you can also find my new podcast, Travel Gluten Free, which you can find on Apple Podcasts, on Stitcher, on Overcast, or wherever you find your favorite podcast from. And I talk about how to live a gluten-free lifestyle and also traveling while you are gluten-free, because if you are gluten-free, you know how much of an issue that is. And so I help people learn how to be gluten-free and do it in a way that's enjoyable.
Awesome. So make sure you go check that out. And Her website for that is travelglutenfree.me. So definitely go subscribe, rate, review, and share a great podcast from a great person. That's going to do it for this episode. The next episode will be episode 107, and this is going to be the House of EdTech Final Four 2018. Make sure you head over to chrisnessy.com before then at chrisnessy.com/HoET Final 4, the number 4, to directly impact which 4 tools make the finals. Episode 107 will be released on April 8th, 2018. Until next time, thank you for learning with me, Derek, and Lynn. And remember, using technology isn't difficult.
Just give it a try.
The House of EdTech is a proud member of Voice Ed Radio. Voice Ed Radio. Your voice is right here. For more great content, go to voiceed.ca. The House of EdTech is a proud member of the Education Podcast Network. The Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. For more, go to edupodcastnetwork.com.